Okay, so let's call this meeting of the Holmes Hindley Royal Building Committee to order at 6:03. The first order of business is approval of meeting minutes from the August 3rd meeting. Now, there are amendments, there are modifications to those minutes. Do we want to discuss what those modifications are, and then we can take up a vote?
Let me tell you what they are. At the beginning, I have Dave Cravenzola as just ONG, but it should be ONG/APC. So I'm going to make that change. Down in the discussion under next steps, after design next steps, I have METP walkthrough, and it should read MEP, so I will make that change. And then Dave, you can help me if there's any questions. Under the sustainability topic, there was a bullet point: Oxford did not use a sustainability consultant, not seeking an LEED. Plaque should be an LEED silver project due to state standards. And Dave has said clarification: ORES and those 3 projects are required to meet CTHBP standards, which is the equivalent to LEED silver.
Right. Just meaning, I just wanted it to be clarified that there is no requirement for, well, Oxridge or these 3 projects to actually be LEED silver. It's just the state requires that they be Connecticut high performance, which is the equivalent of LEED silver. That was it.
Yeah, which is just meeting current building codes, essentially.
Is that really what that is? Is that essentially what LEED silver is?
No, I mean, if that's the guidelines that we have to follow per Connecticut, per the state of Connecticut, we have to meet state code.
Yes.
That's
right. Exactly.
Okay, so with those changes, may I make a motion to approve with those changes?
Can we get a motion to approve? Second. All in favor? Aye.
Thanks, everyone.
Frank Garibaldi, is that a? Can you
aye.
vote yes or no?
Can you hear me? I'm saying aye. Can you?
Okay, great. Thank you.
Sure.
Public comment. There's no members of the public on the Zoom, so we can on the video, so we can skip that, I assume. Chair's report, really everything that I would otherwise put in the chair's report is going to be picked up in the next couple of items, which are really updates on design, the MEP walkthrough, and the meeting with planning and zoning. So I would suggest we skip the specific chair's report and just go right into the substantive items. Is there any reason that we can't do that, Jill or Sarah?
Nope.
Okay. Then the next item is the design update. And I guess I would ask Travis, Jill, and Jameson, who have been attending most of the meetings with Dr. Adley and the design subcommittee, to bring us up to date.
Do you want me to share just a bullet point? I mean,
sure. Yeah.
You know, we're under the assumption we're kind of keeping this high level. We've had a ton of meetings over the past several weeks, and so we can. Let me share my screen here.
And Travis, if you could send whatever.
Yeah, it's just pretty much like a 1-page document, but yes.
That's fine. Thank you.
Let me enlarge this guy. Okay. So like I said, yeah, we did. There were quite a few meetings. I feel like all I've been in is meetings the past couple of weeks, but they've been all productive and moving everything along. So it's been great. And Lauren, who's on with me, is the project architect of the projects. He will give us the P&Z update. He attended with Eric as I was doing the MEP walkthrough with the engineers and Kevin. First thing to hit, because we just kind of did this the other day, we met with civil and landscape architect. They're making they have some good design options for the courtyards that I think we're going to be ready to schedule a meeting, Jill, with the smaller design group. I think we're going to target next Tuesday if you and Dr. Adley are available, and Chris. So that'll be helpful. We're going to have 2 options to look at there. Kind of the more playful option and maybe a more geometric kind of option, but you'll have some choices with some precedent images. So that'll be nice to look at, and we'll be able to incorporate those into the set. Civil and traffic, we were discussing the traffic report with Ty and Bond, and also the civil work with Joe Canis. Some comments here also from BGA. We do need additional surveying required to confirm the inverts of drains, which is not on the current surveys, at least I think for 2 of the 3 schools. So Redness and Mead has given me a proposal to go out and just do that extra bit of work. And so I'll share that with you guys once I get that. Otherwise, civil is making progress. We're kind of just tweaking around with the where we can add those parking spaces and where the town's not going to allow us to add spaces. So we're just moving those around to get as close to the 95 as we can, and we're pretty close.
On the curb cut, just real quickly on the curb
Yeah.
cut, what is Ty and Bond saying, or the next steps on that?
So the curb cut, one of the items that came up is that the town, and Lauren will touch on this a little more, but the town wants a right exit and a right left entry only out of that. So that's the latest we got back from them. So when we have the floor, we have the site plans here that Lauren can review with that. So the next steps is kind of just confirming we're okay with that. That's how we're going to want to proceed, which I think we kind of, that was a potential that they would want, because we're so close to the intersection and the traffic light. They're going to want kind of a one way out, one way in kind of deal there. I don't have the actual next steps there in the time frame, so I got to report back on that with state
because just that's everybody said that's a pretty long lead time process. So I wanted to make sure if there were things that needed to be done on that was in process.
Yep, understood. What's next? The geotechnical and underground utility surveys. I sent Jill, Chris, the proposals for that. So I think that just the next steps, and Kevin, I copied you on that. We just want to ask if you guys are good with that. We can approve it. It'll go through us as a reimbursable, and we can get those guys out there to do the work.
Yeah, I think as a matter of process, what we'll do, Travis, is we'll talk about those. We're going to talk, one of the line items you saw on the agenda was the approval of the KG&D contract, and I just thought we do the approval of those reimbursable third-party proposals at the same time.
Great, no problem. So we did an initial meeting with the principals and Dr. Adley. That went well. We reviewed the storage, office, and resource needs. We went back, reworked the plans. We did another program count between ed specs and what we've got going now. And I think we're meeting everything. That Royal is a bit close, a bit short. I think we have 2 of the 3 resource rooms that we're looking for. But Jill, I think this is another
you have actually 4 of the 6 that we were looking for. And Alan said he would, Alan said that he would have an answer to you guys, to us, by the end of this week on whether or not that is a yes or a no.
You're right. I think, that that 2 of 3 was 2 of the 3 schools we're meeting. Yes. And Tuesday, if we meet Tuesday to review kind of the landscape plans, we can look at the updated plans and the program counts and just make sure we're comfortable with all that.
Great.
Yeah, that would make sense. And that's the next item there, is that we would review with the design committee in their next meeting. We also had a IT power meeting with Jeff Adams and the engineers. And I will distribute meetings for the committee to review, but that was fairly straightforward. I don't know if Kevin, you had any additional comments there, but we understand what the school wants, and we'll show that in the schematic level drawings. Again, we're providing kind of the data drop locations and the conduit, and then you guys would be pulling the actual wiring. The one thing there I think everyone was kind of focused on were the data rooms. It sounds like, actually just talking today with the engineers, that we're likely able to relocate Holmes' data room and put it in the new electrical room that we have by the front entrance. So we're just going to make sure all that works out, and then we can give that space back to the classroom. In the other data rooms, we're looking to keep them where they are. There's really no other great space without compromising other program space. And we're going to look to extend those walls and provide direct entrances into those rooms off of the corridors.
Is that something we can see on Tuesday as well, Travis?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay. BGA, the engineers, BGA met with Green Bank. That was a positive coordination meeting. They're kind of on board. We're tweaking some locations of rooftop equipment. We need to see a final kind of location of the rooftop equipment. But I think the key takeaway there is that both parties are engaged and they're coordinating with each other. And so as we progress and as we develop our drawings and issue our SD and DD sets, we'll be sharing that with Green Bank to make sure they're on board and coordinated with their rooftop solar locations. I think the next step there is some follow-up also with Kevin and discussing, now that we know where the additions are going, there might be opportunities to locate additional solar onto some of those 90s wings roofs. I don't know if that's what you were thinking, Kevin, or coming out of that meeting. It looked like there was some opportunity there, depending on the age of the roofs. In those
Correct,
locations.
just depending on the age of the roof.
Yeah. I think they were holding off at a lot of those locations because it wasn't finalized where the additions would be engaging yet. So,
Kevin and Travis, who are you liaising with on our committee on the roof panels? Is that part of MEP, or are you doing that as part of design, or is it outside of either of those?
I don't know if we have a direct committee member that we're responding to, other than updating this group, and any critical kind of needs or more technical stuff we can review with the design committee.
Okay.
But unless there's someone you want us to be directly communicating with or including in those meetings, if it's Paul or Frank.
I think we can figure it out and we'll get back to you if so.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep. Then we had the MEP walkthrough, and so those minutes at least were distributed amongst, I think, the people who were at the walkthrough, but I can send them out to the group overall.
I forwarded
I
sent the
the
BGA minutes around to the whole committee.
Great. I think they just released a revised set either today.
Yeah, that's what I circulated a little earlier today.
Great. So if anyone has additional comments on that, please let us know. But my takeaway from that was that everyone was on the same page. We got good feedback from ONG. I think one of the key takeaways there was one of the key points was lead times for equipment. And then in talking with BGA, I think what we're going to try to do, and we need to review this with ONG, make sure you guys are comfortable with it, but we're going to try and work the phasing in a way that for those longer lead times for equipment like the AHUs and the electrical panel boards would be coming in the second year, and we can be doing all the prep work and the smaller items in the first summer so that we have enough time to get those pieces of equipment ordered. Otherwise, if we're trying to get them in for next summer, we would need to put those purchase orders in essentially in September. So that's where we just need to coordinate and touch base with David on that and kind of make sure you're comfortable.
So I think one thing, and I don't know if, again, I know George Parento, who was at last week's meeting, has been dealing with this or helping us on another project with it, but we are actually tomorrow on another project, we're taking bids on an early procurement package for things like the switchgear and panel boards and generator, roofing, and some of those long lead items for another project. So we went through the state with it, so we're going to see how the bidding process actually goes. So for our next meeting, I'll certainly have an update as far as if that's an effective way to mitigate the lead time issue as well, rather than having to possibly rephase.
Dave, can't put the cart before the horse. Have to have the short circuit coordination study so we know what we're ordering.
Right. Yep. Agreed.
And guys, if I could step in here, can everybody hear me? It's Frank.
Yes.
Yes.
Sorry. Okay, and I unfortunately didn't make the walkthrough. I'm just looking at the notes, and obviously I think the big part of my value add here is on the mechanical side. And in looking at the notes, I mean, I think overall, especially the general items, they all kind of make sense. But I guess my big question is, at what point are we go? These notes are all well and good, and eventually they will be used to prepare a set of MEP drawings, which I'm sure we will want to value engineer and at least get some flavor for, you know, have some opinions on how else we can do it from either the contractors that are bidding or, you know, people like myself who are involved in the committee. When exactly does that happen? I don't think any of these notes really preclude us from moving down a path, but in looking at some of these items, you know, just picking one, item 13, a VRF system that's heat recovery. I mean, these are specific items that we don't have to discuss in a big group, but when are we going to get, you know, sort of drawings and things on that? Because, you know, there's a lot of stuff here that I would certainly want to understand before we start talking about ordering equipment a year from now. I mean, I can get equipment for these personally, my business. I could get equipment to do all three of these schools probably within 6 weeks. So ordering stuff in September for, I mean, I can get 300 air handlers literally in 6 weeks, and I'm not a big business. So I think going through some of the details on these things before we can't order equipment until we have drawings that have been vetted. So
Yeah,
September's right around the corner. So
it's not so much the air systems unless we're doing bigger rooftops. It's the electrical gear. That's the long lead items. You got stuff that's
okay.
60,
Someone mentioned
65 weeks.
AHUs, so which I took to be air handling units.
Yeah.
But
There are a couple
those
of big
bigger
ones on the roof.
units, yes. But the smaller stuff, the heat recovery stuff, that, yeah, like you said, that's 6 week stuff. But anything larger where you're talking multiple coils or things of that nature, as you know, is a much bigger problem. You know, trying to get copper and stuff. The switchgear could be 90 weeks, 65 weeks. So that's why I'm pushing coordination study on this.
So and let me answer
But
Frank's
we're also get drawings to actually decide this, right? Like equipment,
that, Frank?
you know, schedules. When would we get drawings and equipment schedules and things to sort of?
Yeah,
you know,
so we're in the middle.
Stuff when you don't have complete plans, right?
Yeah, of course. And this is still schematic design. So what this document was essentially a very detailed narrative to guide the design on and what they're putting on the drawings. So they're trying to, you know, be more efficient in the process. So we're looking
at great from that perspective.
Yeah.
It was helpful.
So we're looking at 9. We're going to get a package of. We want to get a package of SD drawings together for 9/12 to send out to both our third-party estimator and to David at ONG and his estimating team, so that they take another 2 weeks to run through that. We have a week kind of back and forth reviewing them. So by the end of September, we have a package to you guys of SD drawings complete with an SD estimate. And then we can have those next level conversations and more detailed discussions about the package.
Yeah, and I do think, for what it's worth, this was, you know, having not been at the walkthrough, I spent, you know, 5 minutes reading through this, and it's a very good overview. So I think, you know, overall a lot of it does make sense. But again,
right, we don't want you seeing this stuff for the first time when we have an SD package going out. We want to be somewhat on the same page as we're doing the initial design. Otherwise, we're just wasting time. So this is more big picture. They have their guidance.
And then things like, for example, again, without trying to get too specific in a call like this, but just because the mechanical walkthrough was just done, you know, again, item number 13, we talk about heat recovery systems. A heat recovery system, for everybody on this phone call, is a much more expensive option. And what it does, it allows in the probably 6 to 8 weeks of the year that we would call a shoulder season, a few weeks in October and a few weeks in April, it would allow classroom 1 to have the heat on while classroom 2 has the AC on. Or the principal's cold, so she wants the heat. The receptionist is hot, so she wants the AC. So again, if these are things that budget-wise, these are luxuries in a lot of ways, right? I mean, these schools are getting full upgrades, right? They're getting air conditioned for the first time. So some of these items, you know, are very expensive, and they're kind of luxuries. So again, before we move down some of these paths, I would certainly encourage the group to think about these, and, you know, a heat recovery, just kind of requiring everybody as of a certain date, let's call it October 15th, which I think is the legal day in New York City where you have to provide heat. As of October 15th, you either have heat or you have the windows open if you're hot, you know. Same thing in the spring. Come April 15th, everybody, you know, heat's turned off. So you either have AC or you put you have AC or you put a sweater on. So those are some things that I would, in looking at this, you know, and these are substantial costs. So, you know, on a $75 million budget, if you could save $1 million on heat pump systems versus heat recovery systems, you know, that's a meaningful number percentage-wise, right, across 3 schools.
So Frank Garibaldi, can I interrupt you for a second? So what are the next steps for MEP? Because I think Frank has some good, important questions that I would imagine, you know, there are some next conversations queued up. What are the next couple of meetings that you guys have planned?
Well, I mean, I think the next step is really to get you the information you need to properly assess and react to. And you can't do that until you get an estimate and see what you're looking at and see the cost.
Well, can I make a suggestion before we talk about cost? And I'm happy to lead the charge on this with the group, is to just go through generally. You're talking equipment that anyone on this phone, regardless of whether you own an AC company or not, can understand. You have big rooftop units, which by way of ductwork blow air or exhaust air into or out of whatever rooms we tell it to. So you'd have to come in and build, you know, install sheet metal, which would, if you want to do it nice in rooms like gyms, I see one of the schools doesn't have a drop ceiling. You could do exposed ductwork. We all see it in restaurants all the time. We see it in the big box stores. We could make it look very lovely by way
Frank,
of
I'm gonna cut you off because this is a little too much minutia for this group. The MEP walkthrough we came out of with a good understanding. We had a lot of situations we had to go through with it. BGA's got it now, so they're taking it and running with it and putting pen to paper, and they're going to come back to us, and then we're going to be able to dive into some. I don't even want to call them schematic drawings, Travis. We're going to call them some DDs, and then you and me, Frank, are going to be able to dig in and see what makes sense, and do some, you know, high budget VE on our own. But we don't need to bog everybody in here with this. We need to get this piece. It's been sorted out in my mind, Travis. Would you agree?
Yep. Yes.
And now BJ's got it and they're running, and that's what we needed them to do. And if we don't like the first pass, and that's where your expertise, like you said, is going to come in, we're going to start digging into these systems and figuring out what we want and what we don't want. But I think at this point,
what do we think the timeline is, and what it is that they would be, what are you expecting them to have produced by then?
I think they're going to have basically equipment per building and layouts, and I'm hoping coordination study is following right behind. So we're going to be able to go building by building and see what makes sense. Because the classrooms really are all the same. It's really just digging into the electrical and then what we need to support the classrooms from for rooftop units and other things. So, like I said, when I left Paul and Vinny Restivo, I think Travis agrees. George was there from
ONG.
Yeah, and ONG, and he's got a good handle on MP. So we all left with kind of on the same parallel path. I think Travis would agree with that. So yep. I'm comfortable with where we are. We just need to get stuff back, and we got to let them. If anybody marching orders on stuff like this, it's going to take them a month to put pen to paper, and that's basically where they're at. So mid-September, I would say we're going to start seeing stuff.
Exactly.
Okay, yes. I think that's great, Paul. I appreciate not trying to get bogged down in minutia, but again, just sort of setting everybody up so that they're understanding what we're giving people. So forgetting about how we give it to them, because that will be with price and all, But just again, my simple question earlier, I think the answer to my question earlier is probably, at some point valid for the group. Do we want to because some people get hot and cold in different times, so for a few weeks of the year, do we want to pay what could be $1 million to give them that luxury versus, again, a sweater or an open window? And I think for people like myself, not like you or me, who may not understand all of this stuff, as part of the drawings, maybe have a discussion or a separate meeting where we're talking about how some of these systems are, we're giving putting a fairly large premium on some luxuries or some conveniences. So that would be my only point in raising all this, is that
no, and I think what we'll do, Frank, is we'll go into subcommittee for you, me, and whomever with the MEP engineers, and kind of we can cherry pick what we want and don't want, and then we can bring it to the full group.
Agreed, Paul.
We can VE that out before it gets to the group. You and me know what needs to happen with those situations. So that generally what we do, Frank, is we'll hammer it out in the subcommittee and then make a recommendation to the full committee.
Okay.
Part of the subcommittee is the school district, which has a point of view. So Kevin will certainly have a point of view on what
Yes. Kevin is intimately involved.
Yeah.
Trust me.
Yes, and then of course we'll have recommendations from the engineers et al. But I do think, Frank, your point of understanding, we do want to understand it not just from the systems perspective, but what kind of use case, how it changes for our end user. So I do appreciate that when you all come back to us, you will explain the impact on the school, the operational impact on the school district, in various capacities, cost, how it feels to people, et cetera, et cetera.
And I'd just add the other one in there too, is they may seem like nice to haves on the surface, but they might be code requirements or, CT performance school requirements, or our green talk last meeting where we're not going for those items, but some of these, like whether it's heat recovery or energy recovery, are things you would do when you're, going after, or you want a more sustainable building. So there's going to be some compromises there, and you're going to have to look at the cost and make a decision and what's important to the school.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think but I just think that's, again, I'm not looking at this as a private developer building my own building. Obviously I'm trying to put the hat of public servant on since I've been on the committee. And again, just looking at saving the town and others money for, the conveniences of a few people during a few weeks of the year. It's just things like that, I think longer term we should, the whole group needs to be aware of that stuff.
That's perfect. And at the end of SD is the time to have that conversation when we have documents in front of us.
Yeah, let's keep going. I think you were on your.
Oh yeah,
Travis, were you on
yes.
number 8 then on your?
Just to finish on number 7 there, the generator locations will also be a part of our Tuesday design committee group, but we kind of know where they need to go, and then there might be some we'll have to discuss a temporary location possibly. So I think that'll be good to just hammer out with the design committee group first, and then we can come back. All right. I think next steps here, we would want to just schedule a music library art user group meetings. I know that came out of our last meetings with Dr. Adley. So we have put together our questionnaire. We'll get that out to him to give them something ahead of time to respond to, and then we'll get that coordinated and scheduled.
Travis, have you received the latest library study? Yeah, I know you got something that Sue had that was a little bit older. Have you received from the district the latest iteration of the library?
Thought Sue did, but I will check and make sure that's the case.
Okay, because I think it's important before the questionnaire goes out.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, and then we touched on when we intended to get a package out for pricing, which will take 2 to 3 weeks, and then by the end of the month we'll have a complete package. All right, so I think the only part missing from that is really to go into the P&Z update, unless you guys had any other questions on this end.
Yeah, I mean, I think, our agenda has the MEP update, which I think the
Yeah,
MEP
kind of just
tour
lumped in.
update, which I think we've now done, and everybody has the Barilli Gallagher notes, and I think so we can probably skip any further talk on that and go to the P&Z meeting. And I think, Lauren, just one technical point, I don't think Frank Garibaldi was at the P&Z meeting. You have him listed as an attendee, and I don't think he was there. I think he was on the he was originally scheduled for the MEP tour that was happening kind of at the same time as the P&Z meeting. So if you could just provide, I'm sorry, Joe?
It should be Randy from our building committee. That's, I think, who's
Right.
missing.
Yeah, it was Randy Giraldo.
Oh, and there's the other guy.
There was a town. Yeah, there was a P&Z person.
Fred Donnett.
Okay, I didn't catch his name.
Yeah, Fred Donnett. I apologize for interrupting.
Appreciate it. Got it.
So yeah, so the meeting, as noted in the, I didn't get a chance to send them around to the building committee. The minutes that, in fact, I'll do that while he's going through it. But Lauren, maybe it's easiest since you put the minutes together, and then Jill and I can comment as you go, because we were in attendance as well.
Sure. And Chris, really quick, could you forward me a copy of those minutes as well?
Yeah, I will.
Thanks. Great, thanks.
Sure, I'll revise the meeting minutes with the correct attendees on the top and reissue those. Okay, so we'll talk about Hindley and Holmes and then Royal. But right, it's our first meeting, sat down with planning and zoning to just let them see what we have and get their input. And it'd be great if we enter the public approval process with both parties aligning, right? So with our plans and what we're proposing aligning with the opinions of the zoning staff, puts us in a good position. And so that's kind of what the meeting was about. And we'll just review the items that we talked about on Hindley. It did come up as a question: would no parking signs be posted on the post road? The town seemed interested in that, but and that would be an item that the committee would take on themselves. Nothing that the town would do for us, but the committee would spearhead that. They voiced interest in having a crosswalk located at the intersection with the light, and removing that crosswalk that's currently located and shown at the new curb cut. Right, so Travis already covered the curb cut in the town, and along with the traffic engineer, feedback is to prefer a right exit only and a left turn entry only for that area, and that'd be the best approach for going to DOT. We talked about drainage, and again, anytime we're increasing coverage of more than 1,000 square feet, we need of impermeable surface. We need drainage study and engineering done. So we're working with Joe Canis with Tie and Bond, and we are adding a rain garden to collect on-site and treat on-site water retention, focusing on the added impermeable area and retaining it, treating it, letting it percolate into the soil over time. So right, that's where the mouse is located right now.
So, Lauren, just thank you. Just to clarify, this is again sort of where we are in conceptual design.
Yeah.
It hasn't been given to the committee yet for their approval of the and it hasn't even gone all the way through the process with administration. So just so people are not feeling like they have to sign off on what we're seeing here tonight, this is what's been developed so far. It was presented to planning and zoning so they could take a look and kind of troubleshoot where they might have questions, where they thought we might need additional approvals, where they, thought that we might be going the wrong direction. We'll see that at Royal in terms of something we might run into. But there is no expectation that the committee members need to attend to this closely enough that they should be signing off. This was just where we are. Sorry, Chris, you go ahead.
No. Thank you, Jill. I think we can try to keep this pretty high level because this was really the first time, although they have attended some of the meetings virtually and seen some of the presentations. This is really the first time that Jeremy Ginsburg at Planning and Zoning really saw this stuff in any real detail. So it was a lot of just going through concepts with him and him coming up with ideas and issues, all of which need to be thought about and addressed. But to just reiterate what Jill said, nothing was agreed upon with Jeremy. Nothing was told specifically to us that we could or couldn't do. It was all still very much, just orienting him to what was going on, so we can probably move through some of the detail stuff fairly quickly. I mean, it was an hour plus meeting. We can, just give the high level.
So is it more helpful to kind of discuss the points where he might have had some issues with or some concerns?
Probably easiest, yeah, rather than go through every aspect of it. I think that's right,
yeah,
Travis.
Okay, good.
All
Good.
Right.
So Travis, that completes my Hindley comments, unless you have more to add.
No, there's nothing more to add here regards to that. It sounded like that we know the curb cut issue, and it didn't seem like
the curb cut issue. We know the drainage issue. Yeah,
right.
For sure.
Yeah, there weren't really major items to take away from that. He was generally on board, right, with the approach, right?
Yeah,
so
and all of these schools,
the key takeaway.
Right, and beginning with this one, since it's up with all these schools, we could get more parking spaces. Parking's always an issue, right? We could get more if we sacrificed trees, and we're not proposing that. So the town is also on board with that thinking as well.
Okay, let's go on to the next one. Homes.
Okay, so at Homes we have a construction access road that we think would be a good idea to turn into a permanent road, and there the mouse is on it. We need a construction road there. There's a little bit of grading to do with the retaining wall, and we talked to the town about having it as a permanent road, and they thought it was very supportive of the concept, helping for emergency services and just for the school to function in general. So it's a straight shot in from the street, going through there. So and back for the emergency services. The town thought that was great, and there's a retaining wall there. There's some technical details to work out, but again, this is just something we threw out there as a suggestion, and and the feedback was good. Parking, we looked into. Right. So the Darien parking design standards require plantings per so many cars in a row, parking spaces in a row. So that's another limiting factor. We're not able to take out the islands and add more parking spaces for that reason. Again, we're very aware of the parking and looking to get maximize within reason what's possible.
I think one thing on Homes just to highlight is a lot of what we're thinking of doing there hinges on the school district getting control of the Curtis property, and in the P&Z meeting they noted not just the Curtis property should it would probably make sense not just to convey where the house was, which is where you see the expanded parking, but the strip next to the school, merging the wooded strip next to the school with the school as well. And a lot of that hinges on getting an updated survey from Redness and Mead showing where there may be wetlands. But P&Z at least was on board and encouraging in terms of the school district acquiring that property.
Chris, if I may, I have a brief update on the wetland survey.
Okay.
The soil scientists finished up on the 21st, and we should have the report any day now. But I do have an updated survey with all the flags located if you want me to share with the group.
Okay. Sure. Yeah, no, I think the sooner we can get that into KG&D's and Ty and Bond's hands, the better.
Yep, they are aware.
That'd be great. Okay.
Yeah, that's great.
Okay.
All right, so traffic. Just to note, the state might have jurisdiction over on-site traffic, and this is a high traffic area during peak times. So that was interesting that came up. But we'll go ahead, submit as planned. But that state might have an opinion about what we're doing on site. Just that little caveat to throw there. Traffic engineer.
Lauren, is that only here? Is that only at Homes, or is that at?
It's only an issue at Homes because
Okay.
it backs up on Hoyt in front of the school. So it's everywhere, but it came up because of Homes.
Okay.
Right, with all of our property, all of the projects, we have to manage the storm water and retain it. And so we're looking at this also. We don't have, nothing's identified yet, and it will be developed. So just to throw that out there. And that's my list for the homeschool. So.
Yep. Again, so there were no really major issues that they identified or were concerned about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so move on to Royal.
Yep.
Great, thanks. All right, so we talked about adding parking in the 25-foot buffer to the top of the page, to the top left corner. We're not able to, we looked into it, and that's not really an option for us. But what we can do and add to get more spaces is to expand the parking lot towards the intersection of Mansfield at the bottom left of the page. And it'll involve taking out a few trees, moving a light pole, but it's within, it's available. And so we think it's, best option to expand it there.
So that gives us 8 new spots down there. And I think, Lauren, we were also looking at we might be able to squeeze a couple of spots here on the angled portion of that upper lot, which would be outside of the setback. And maybe we can get another four spaces out of there. So Civil is laying out those updates.
Yeah. Again, same comment on drainage. And those are the highlights for Royal.
Yeah.
So
okay.
In general, well, I think Travis, you've already touched on most of the general items.
Yeah.
So I don't need to be redundant.
Yeah, I think it would be helpful. I think it would be helpful to highlight for the committee sort of the key, like the upcoming target dates for town approvals, because I know that was discussed. I think Jill was still in the meeting. I had to leave at that point, but I think there was some time spent on P&Z approval, architectural review board approval, environmental approval, and kind of what we were targeting for each of those organizations.
And I think you started to do that, Lauren, didn't you? When
yeah.
you were starting to kind of outline all those items. Yep.
Yeah. So I have that. So right, we have the EPC for the wetlands approval. Our plan is to submit in late September and be heard in early October. For the ARB, it'll be one single application for all 3 schools.
Okay.
So we'll talk about all 3 schools at the one single ARB hearing.
Great.
So that was encouraging to hear, and well, that's what we're trying for. So it'll probably be a total of 2 meetings. We'll submit it early. We'll submit early October, and aim for a hearing in mid-October. And this will likely be a hearing, a special calendar date just for these schools.
Okay. You include these in the minutes? You're going to include that information in the minutes, Lauren? The scheduling?
Yeah, they're in. This information is included in the P&Z meeting notes that I distributed today.
Great, fantastic.
All right, great.
Okay.
Planning and zoning will be best if we divide up the 3 projects into individual submittals. Royal is a little more involved, and you know, they all have their own complexities. So you know, taking the guidance from Jeremy Ginsburg, I think that's the best way to go. So it'll be a minimum of 2 meetings each. So
yeah, but they can likely be heard on the same night in back-to-back.
Yeah, right.
It probably allows them to approve them. If one's easier to go through, then they can get that out of the way. And then in future meetings, we
wouldn't want one project, one technicality on one project to hold up all 3.
Yeah, exactly. Okay.
So so the schedule for P&Z submittal is to submit end of November and go through the process and obtain final approval from them early February. That would be the earliest, but optimistic, but attainable. DOT, we hope to submit for full plans at the end of January. We need to have the whole construction set, ready in order to. That's why it's late January. The whole construction set has to be together. And then we'd hope to receive approval late February, early March. Planning and zoning has begun the Connecticut State General Statute 824 referral process. And I included as Exhibit A in the notes I distributed for a little description of what that is. So end of September, we'll have a schematic design set as Travis said already, and bidding February, we'll go out to bid, and we can't award the project until we have state approval. And we talked about, the first time the concept was introduced of engaging the neighbors for informational, etc. Type of a meeting. And so that should happen. We just don't have any more details on that at this point. So
this is something P&Z recommended to have a meeting with the neighbors.
Yeah, and it's typical. So the neighbors should. It's the best way to.
Get everyone on
address
board.
Concerns outside of and before the public review process, and it can minimize minutia level concerns that have a potential of slowing down the progress.
Yep. Yeah, you want to hear everyone's issues.
Yeah,
for sure, and have a chance to address them and get them comfortable. Okay, great. Thanks, Lauren.
Thank you.
Okay, you got Jill, Chris, anything to add to that, or?
No, that was super helpful, you guys. Thank you very much.
Yep. Okay.
Next item. Next item on the agenda was to just discuss, hopefully somewhat briefly, the KG&D contract. As the committee knows, at our prior meeting, last meeting, I'm getting my meetings mixed up, but we discussed in a fair amount of detail the fee proposals, the different fee proposals put forth by KG&D, and the scope of services that related to each of those fee proposals. And the committee approved moving forward with what we were then calling fee proposal 2, which would be, essentially kind of the all-in rather than what we're calling the a la carte approach to services, and including as a third-party reimbursable the additional civil engineering work by Ty and Bond. I then worked with our town attorney, Patty Gaug, to revise the KG&D contract to reflect those agreed upon fee structure and agreed upon scope of services. And Sarah sent around that version of the KG&D contract. KG&D has signed off on the contract. Town attorney and myself have signed off on the contract as well as the attached exhibits. So the next step with regard to that would be getting a vote to approve the contract by the committee, and the contract would then go out for execution by the town on the one hand and by KG&D on the other hand. And as part of that contract, there are a number of third parties that KG&D would be retaining, and that would be paid by way of reimbursement, straight, no markup, pass-through reimbursement. Two of those categories, KG&D has reached out and gotten proposals for, one of those being geotechnical engineering. They got 3 proposals. They reviewed those with Ty and Bond and recommended proceeding with a firm called Tectonic, which would cover all 3 of the sites for geotechnical work. And then they also got proposals or sought proposals for underground marking and mapping. That's the famous call before you dig spray paint that you see a lot of times around on the roads. And they are recommending a firm called NESI. And they would be using underground radar. And they were the only firm that responded that had that capability. And so KG&D was recommending that be the firm that be retained. While the committee doesn't have to formally approve those because they are being retained by KG&D and not by the town, they are reimbursables. And so it was suggested that we bring those up and discuss them with the committee as well. But I guess initially I want to see if there were any questions or items that anybody wanted to discuss with regard to the KG&D contract generally. And if not, if we could get a motion to approve that contract so we could get it executed in place. So first, I guess I would ask if anybody had questions, items they wanted to discuss. If not, then if I could get a motion to approve entering into the AIA document B101 with KG&D and sending that to the town for execution and sending it to KG&D for execution. Motion by Jameson, second by Jill. All in favor, aye. Frank Garibaldi, do we get an aye from you? Or do you have an aye or a nay or an abstain? Frank?
I apologize. You're on mute. Aye.
Great. So that was approved. I'll then coordinate with the town attorney to get execution versions of the contracts sent around. And I know Eric's not here, but maybe Travis, you and your team can pass along to Eric our appreciation for the good faith negotiation on the
Will do.
contract.
Yep.
And likewise, go ahead on those, on the geotechnical and on the utility marking.
I think, given
We
the
need to do them
history,
separately.
I'm sorry?
No? Should we, Jill?
I don't think
should
we need
not
to vote on
do-
those. I think, I'm
Or
sorry?
no? Okay.
Jill?
I was just going to say, given the history with lines, Travis, we talked about it a little bit last meeting, but just take a half a second and talk to us about why you're recommending this vendor and what that additional capability gets us, please, for the
for the underground utility mark out, right. So with the ground penetrating radar, they can detect plastic piping that wouldn't be detected from the normal approach. So that just, and it's really not that much more money. They were actually cheaper than the other guy that Redness and Mead recommended, who did not have the capability. So yeah, it just gives us a more complete picture. The more complete picture we have now up front saves us on change orders later from just, coming across something we didn't expect.
Yeah. And this is the kind of as far out as we can get the technology to go. This is the cutting edge in terms of what's
that's
available.
My understanding. Yep, that's what was recommended by both our engineers.
Okay.
And they were adamant that we we had that this time around.
Yeah, given the age of the buildings, I think the more thorough we can be.
And and it's a focused study. We had highlighted site plans that we gave to the company, so they are just performing the work where we have the additions and where we need to make the site modifications.
Right. Kevin, have you had the opportunity to use this kind of technology before?
No, and I wish I had, because we jokingly called it "pray before you dig."
Pray before you dig. Yeah.
Exactly.
I'm very glad you decided to go with this route.
Yeah.
I think it's really the next thing to talk about before we wrap up is I think we've spoken a lot about key upcoming dates, target dates in particular, as they relate to targets for schematic design and getting things in front of the various town departments. And then I know there are a number of, go ahead, Sarah.
We can accept a recommendation, but we also need to vote on the subcontractor approvals. So we just need to kind of go through the motion of putting each of the subcontractors forth.
Sure.
So if someone
then
can make a motion for Tectonic, for the geotechnical
Yeah, can
engineering.
we get a motion? Can we get a motion to authorize KG&D to retain Tectonic for geotechnical services at a cost of $35,875 to be reimbursed? Moved by Jameson. Can I get a second? Seconded by Jill. All in favor? Aye. Frank?
Aye.
Great.
Aye, if you can hear me.
Yes, we can. Separately, can we get a motion to approve KG&D retaining NESI to do utility mark out underground mapping at the 3 schools for $4,500 plus $375 to mark up the existing survey documents? Motion by Jameson, second by Jill. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Frank? Great.
Aye.
Thanks, everybody. Aye, aye, aye. All right. Sarah, do we need to plan? Do we need to schedule
we do
forthcoming
we need
meetings?
to schedule our meetings. We do not have meetings in the calendar, and that has been very difficult for the town. They would really like to know when we're meeting, so we do need to set some meeting dates. I'm sorry. As a practical matter, I can discuss this later if you would like to discuss other upcoming key dates with KG&D or anyone else on the call. We can do our committee meetings. Lots, it's up to you.
My take on committee meetings is, because we only have 5 of us from the committee here, that that we do the same exercise that we did to plan for the meetings this summer, which is, send out a note to the committee members. I think this Wednesday, for me at least, this Wednesday at 6 o'clock works well.
We did agree
But
to that, yes.
I'm only one person. But maybe you could poll. Now there's a bigger constituency. There's the committee members, but there's Dave Cravenzola and the ONGAP team, Kevin obviously, and the KG&D team as well. So we need to coordinate with all the different groups, and obviously the committee and the ex officios, because the principals in the school district and Kevin are going to roll into school soon. So if you would be willing to do it, maybe send out a similar email polling the group as to whether or not Wednesday at 6 p.m. continues to work for
Do you want
at
to
least
do that?
September.
Do you want to do that,
Go
Chris,
ahead.
or do you want to just have Sarah create a schedule of meetings every other week, Wednesday at 6? I think we did poll them once before. It would be my vote that we push through.
That's
and
fine.
If there's a major issue, when we can vote on it next time. And if there's a major issue, people can raise it at that time.
Jill has taken the words out of my mouth. Yes, please. We did poll the committee and they did
Is there anybody on this call for whom this time slot doesn't work? Then let's go ahead with that.
6 o'clock works for me.
This is the only group that really matters. I'm kidding. If
Well,
you
this
showed
time-
up,
this
you
moment it
matter.
does.
If you showed up, you matter. That's why Carrie's going to get everything she wants at her school.
Right.
Just kidding.
Yay, Henley. No, just kidding. Sorry, guys. Okay. 2 thumbs up from Carrie. Okay, so then let's do this. If I can propose, a bi-monthly meeting happening in September, for example, we can choose to do on the 14th and
So
the
I
28th.
think, Sarah, you should probably create a schedule.
Okay.
Set it up, and then we can vote on it next meeting, please.
Okay. Can we at least set the next date for the September 14th? Can we do that? Okay. So let's set for September 14th for the next date. We don't have, we need to at least have the next one set. Is that okay with everyone? Yes?
Certainly with me, yeah. September 14th, did you say?
Mm-hmm. Wednesday at 6 p.m.
Travis, are we looking for sign off on anything before the 14th, or is the 14th a good date in terms of when you might have anything from a design perspective that would, or Lauren?
We'll have our schematics set out for pricing at that point, but I don't think at this level that we really want to be changing documents anyway, at this point. And I think we get what we have together for pricing,
Okay.
and run with that. And we can make, if we get a meeting together for just the smaller design committee to discuss kind of smaller details, I think we can make that decision in that group on the 30th. And then we can use that information for this next set of documents. So I think that's fine.
Okay, so the idea would be to trust the design committee, which is really a lot of administrative input plus the architects, to come up with what will be submitted for pricing. Then when we'll take a look at the combination of the design and the cost, reconcile those, and then the committee would authorize what moves forward. Is that summarized correctly?
Yeah. With yes, they would authorize the schematic design package is the appropriate way we want to proceed, and that we're given approvals to proceed with DD and develop it further, or we make changes based on what our discussions are with the committee.
I'll be there. Are the other committee members comfortable with that?
Sure. I'm gonna catch as catch can on some of the Tuesday mornings. I'll do the best I can, but
Okay.
I need to be going into the city.
So thank you, Sarah. That's perfect.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Just really quick, the meeting on the 14th, is that in person since this one was virtual?
We need to have that discussion. I think virtual has been very convenient for everyone. We need to discuss how often we want to meet in person. We have said one in person, one in virtual. This has been very convenient for the folks over the summer with travel. It is the committee's preference to meet in person rather on the 14th, or to have it as virtual meeting.
So again, Travis, in terms of content, do you anticipate that you'd be presenting large designs? I think that is a little more complicated virtually.
I don't
So-
think that I will double check Eric's intent there. But I don't think the intent would be to show the full like schematic package at that point. But I'll have that discussion with him tomorrow. We can get back to you on that.
Thank you.
I'll check in with him. He looks available on the 14th. I will be in Colorado on the 14th, but he would handle that.
Sarah, I think virtual is working really, really well.
Agreed.
And I think for now, the default should be virtual, and then we can decide to go rather than, early on where the default was in person. I think let's have the default setting be virtual, and then if we feel like it's a need to have in person, or just we haven't been together for quite a while, we'll do it in person just to get people together.
That makes sense, Chris. And if we need to present, some design or some other ideas, we can always meet in person. But let's set then September 14th for a virtual meeting at 6 p.m. and I will get the link out to everyone.
Yeah, I think in person is like best when it's like a large presentation that's going to have a lot of input, and you don't get people talking over each other on the
Right.
That's when the in person is good.
Yeah. I mean, screen share is nice, but it's a little hard to point to things and whatever.
It is.
Okay.
Yep.
Enough said. That I think was all the business we had to cover. Was there anything that anybody wanted to bring up or raise or discuss before we move to adjourn?
Chris, just one thing. Just let me know with our contract if there's any other questions that come up.
Yeah, no, I think the town attorney was going to be getting back to your colleague who sent some comments to us. She was going to be getting back to him directly in the next day or so. But I think we're very close on. I think we're close on that, and maybe even hopefully on the meeting on the 14th, which is our next meeting, be able to do the same thing that we did here with the KG&D contract and approve that for execution.
Great, thanks.
Thank
Okay.
you for all the work on the contracts, Chris.
What's that? I'm sorry?
Thank you for all the work on the contracts.
Oh gosh, of course. It's my one little value add here. With that, can I get a motion to adjourn? Jill moves, Sarah seconds, all in favor? Aye?
Aye.
All right. Thank you, everybody. This was a longer meeting, but I think we covered a lot of good ground this evening. Thanks so much.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Have a good night, everyone.
See you in a couple of weeks.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay, bye-bye.